Okay, so we're going to talk about sexual alchemy, the process of cultivating sexual energy. Sex is this thing where we all love sex, and we grow up with so much shame around it, with all this, don't touch that part of your body, like hide this part of yourself, and we get that as one message, but then at the same time, we see sex in movies, we're exposed to porn, and so it creates all this conflicting ideas around sex and sexuality. And so inherently it creates a lot of tension, shame, and constriction. And I think that this is why so many men experience things like premature ejaculation and why we get locked into this model of the ejaculatory orgasm, which is an expenditure of our life force. And it's funny because this was like 2010 or something. I read this new age, super spiritual book by a guy named Drunvalo Melchizedek. Is anyone familiar with this guy's stuff? It's called The Ancient Secret, the Flower of Life, and it's like all this esoteric world history. Yeah, it's great. It's a good kind of like mind trip. I remember in one part of the book, he's talking about semen being important and that you shouldn't just like waste your sexual energy. And he had this method called onking, where as you ejaculate, you like try to redirect the energy up, and I didn't really get much results from that. But I remember reading this, and I was like 20, 21 years old at the time, and I'm like, shit, like there's something wrong with ejaculating. And of course, at the time I wasn't quite ready for the semen retention practice, right? But it planted the seed of like, this is maybe something I shouldn't be doing all the time. But I continued to do it, and I started to notice like, damn, there is this kind of diminishment after I ejaculate. And I remember also, I was some guy I was following about like yoga when I was first getting into yoga in 2011. He was talking about brahmacharya, and he was like, yeah, you were celibate, and you don't have sex or pleasure, and like you never get sick, you're super healthy. And I'm like, sounds awesome. And it lasted about 3 days. And so I understood that in theory and the concept, but I loved orgasm. I loved sexual pleasure. I was like, I wasn't going to give that up. And then in 2000, I think it was 2013, I downloaded, anybody ever use like torrents? Where you like, I downloaded this like ebook collection of like Tantra. I was looking into Tantra. Because when I was like 13 or 14 years old, my best friend at the time, he got his grandmother to take us to go see American Pie 2, this like R-rated.
I hope she didn't come.
Oh, she was there with us. but she was like the cool grandma, like she didn't care. It was funny. It's this like college humor titty movie. But there's one of the guys in the movie, he's talking about Tantra. He's like, he's meditating and like chanting mantras, and he's like, Tantra makes sex like one long orgasm. And I had just discovered masturbation, orgasm at the time, and so I'm like, that's interesting. So in my early 20s, I'm looking into Tantra. I downloaded this like ebook package that had Multi-Orgasmic Man by Montauk Chia. And I read that book, and then it started coming together. I'm like, oh shit, so you can like have sex, you can have sexual pleasure and not ejaculate, and this would actually be a way I could stop ejaculating, or at least stop ejaculating frequently. Is the concept of semen retention new to anybody here? Okay. When you ejaculate, the body releases a hormone called prolactin, which is the hormone that is strong in women when they're breastfeeding. And it has this effect of kind of feminizing you. It lowers your testosterone. High prolactin inhibits your testosterone levels, so you feel more docile, more sluggish. It's why you want to just like lay around and play video games. When you're frequently ejaculating, you have high levels of prolactin often. You're kind of living in this post-nut phase. And the older you get, the more strong this hormonal shift is after ejaculating, and the longer it lasts. And it's after you ejaculate, the recovery period, the refractory period, you're essentially impotent. You can't get an erection unless you watch porn or something, which like falsely overstimulates you, which just puts you further down this path of depletion. But that's something on a physiological level. Another interesting thing is that you lose a lot of zinc through ejaculating. And the older that you get, the harder it is for the body to absorb zinc from your diet. So like zinc deficiency can result from excessive ejaculation, especially as you age. But on a energetic level, I mean, it's very common in most of the spiritual traditions, most of the like cultivation traditions, Tantra, yoga, the Taoists, of course, they talk about semen being concentrated life force. There's that saying in Ayurveda, I think it's Ayurveda, where they say 1 drop of semen is equivalent to 80 drops of blood. So it's a super concentrated substance that our body produces. And we're kind of grown up to see it as almost like this waste product. Like, oh, you got to clean it out, man. Just keep it, ejaculate frequently, keep your prostate healthy. I know guys who are in their 70s who've been doing semen retention for decades. Not that they haven't ejaculated for decades, but they've been doing this as a lifelong practice and no prostate issues. Basically, your sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces you have available to you. As soon as I started realizing it was extremely obvious, because I thought, what was one of the major driving factors in my life? It was sex. Like, I remember being a teenager, spending hours on, my family, small town, 45 minutes from here. We had dial-up internet, one family computer. So I'd have to hook the computer up to the family phone line and be like, okay, hopefully no one wants to use the phone. And I'd be like, mom and dad gonna walk in on me? And it would take an hour to download this 5-second pixelated clip that you could barely see what was happening. And then in my teenage years, chasing women, just obsessed with women, trying to get sex, trying to get emotional validation, all these things. So I'm like, this is a very powerful driving force, obviously. And what if we can take that force that's driving us to do all these things very unconsciously and take control of it? Or at least develop this relationship with it so that we can put that, imagine putting that intensive, even obsessive drive into a bigger goal. Putting it into building a business, putting it into developing your health. If you're an artist, putting it into your music, your artistic expression. So this is what the alchemy of the sexual energy is. For men, it's about not wasting this anymore by excessive ejaculation. It's not that you can never ejaculate. I don't have that standpoint. I don't think that there's anything wrong with ejaculation overall. It's just you cannot do it too often. When I was getting into this, I was hearing a lot of mixed things because, has anyone read Taoist Secrets of Love, the Montauk Chia book? It's a great book. It's very well written. It's written by Michael Wynn. But it's the first several chapters, it almost makes it sound like you're gonna die if you ejaculate. So I'm learning something shit, I gotta stop ejaculating. So anytime I would, I'd go 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then I'd have a wet dream, or I was self-cultivating and accidentally went over the edge. And I was like, oh God, I failed, and I felt terrible. I felt terrible for days. And that pattern lasted for years, because what was happening for me was no matter what I did, after about 6 weeks of not ejaculating, I would have a nocturnal emission. It would come out of my sleep. And for years. And so eventually I was like, what if that's just as long as I can go? I'm pretty young. I was in my 20s at the time. Maybe I should just allow myself to choose to ejaculate at that point. So I started to do that. And then I realized oh, I actually don't feel wiped out anymore. I actually feel fine after ejaculating. And eventually I started to feel energized after an ejaculation. Of course, I'm also doing these practices of drawing the sexual energy up. I wasn't just going on Pornhub and rubbing one off. This is about your jing, J-I-N-G. Jing is your physical essence in Chinese medicine, Taoist cosmology. And you're born with a certain amount of it. So I have this model. If I had a whiteboard, it's nice to draw this up to see it, but I've got a video on it. But it's the idea is we're born with a certain amount of energy, our jing. And it's that's what we have. It's what allows our body to keep creating itself. Our body's constantly reproducing ourselves. Our cells are reproducing, and that is what's keeping us alive. It's every 7 years, our body's a completely different body. I've actually heard that they're kind of finding it's actually more every 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's our jing that's allowing us to do this. So the jing is an aspect of life force energy. And the Taoist cosmology is that there's different forms of this energy on different vibrational levels. The slower it vibrates, the more dense it is. And they have this, the 3 treasures, which is jing, qi, and shen, which are 3 different forms of vibration of the life force. The metaphor here would be water. It can exist as a solid, ice, a liquid water, or a gas, like mist or vapor. And so the same thing with our energy. So Shen is the highest vibrational form. It's the mist, and that is spirit. It's this ethereal energy that we can't really grab it. It's not really tangible to us. Qi is more related to water. It's this intermediary substance. It does have a substance type of quality to it. It's still somewhat intangible, but you can actually feel it. You can feel it moving through your channels. You can even see it a little bit. Different people can see it to varying degrees. And qi is kind of an intermediary between matter and spirit. It's this information that's moving through the channels of our body. Jing is very close to physicality. It's right above being in the physical plane. So it's slowly vibrating. And so we're born with a certain amount of jing, and once we spend it, we die, essentially. And there's various ways that we can spend it. It's like you're born with $1 million in your bank account, and we're not really taught how to conserve and reinvest our energy, so to speak. We're only taught how to spend it. You know, the world's just like, everything's happening out here, just scatter, scatter, scatter our energy. And so one of the main ways that men lose their jing is ejaculating, because it's a big resource. The body's putting the best of the best into creating new life. Jing is often most related to the kidneys, kidney energy. And so the lower dantian is considered to be the area of jing, and also where jing transforms into qi. So this region, the lower body, in Chinese medicine, when they talk about the kidneys and the kidney energy, they're really talking about this whole lower region, especially the lower back region. So the actual organs of the kidneys, adrenals, bladders, testicles, reproductive organs, as well as the blood and blood vessels. The semen is a very physical expression of the jing. Almost like the jing's like this mist sitting here. And when the body needs to create hormones, it needs to create reproductive fluid, it takes some of that mist and it condenses into like a raindrop, and now it's this liquid physical form. And so that's what the body's using to produce hormones, to produce fluids, etc. It's this vital energy, your jing. And there's other ways you can spend it. Stress expends your jing, too much thinking expends it, unhealthy lifestyle, etc. But ejaculation's probably the number one. So what we're doing in sexual kung fu is, first we stop the leak. We stop leaking this jing by excessive ejaculation. But that's just one part of it. And we stop the leak by not ejaculating frequently. So then we start to build up this energy in the testicles, in the perineum area. Our jing starts to build. And then we take that jing and we move it through the body. So we circulate it. When we practice the microcosmic orbit, when we practice orgasmic breathing, there's sometimes this misunderstanding. People talk about you're actually nutting up the spine. You're ejaculating up the spine and your semen's actually moving through your spine. There doesn't seem to actually be a physiological pathway for the sperm to move out of the testicles. But what it is you're extracting the energy from the sperm. You're extracting the essence of the sperm and moving that through your body. And so you're capturing that. The Taoists call it jing qi, which is like the essence of the sperm. And it's this thick, dense, creative sexual energy. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, but the quality of sexual energy is that it's an amplifier. Amplifies things. When you're turned on, when you're aroused, everything's amplified. Your breath deepens, sensations are intensified, emotions are intensified, whether love or anger. It can be both sides of the spectrum. So it turns things on. It cranks things up to 12. It also glues things together. It's like psychic superglue. It bonds you to thoughts, bonds you to actions, bonds you to feelings, bonds you to the porn screen, the porn you're watching. So one of the main problems in the world that we live in is that people are completely unaware of this, and men are both completely wasting their sexual energy, making them age prematurely. I mean, hormone levels are at an all-time low. The average testosterone level is it's around 300. It's like nanograms per liter, whatever the measurement of testosterone is. It's lower than ever. And it's getting lower every single year. Basically, men in their 20s and 30s now have the hormone profiles of what used to be normal for 70-year-old men. I think there's many causes for it, like dietary things, environmental pollutants, even behavioral things, how kind of, the gender dynamics and things have shifted. But I think one of the biggest causes is just the free availability of porn, like tube porn, where it's like any moment you could be streaming high definition, or we were talking about VR porn. Like you can have any image of any attractive woman, a new woman every time, and it just overstimulates men to ejaculate like crazy, and they dry up. By rebuilding our vitality, by stopping this leak, it improves your hormone levels. It's interesting because in my early 20s, I was very unmotivated. I had a lot of brain fog, unmotivated. I was very feminine. I suspect that my testosterone was low. I had a hard time putting on body mass. And Once I started practicing sexual kung fu, like the first time I went like a week without ejaculating, which was an accomplishment for me. I used to ejaculate every single day. It was just like brushing my teeth. Just like, that's just what I do. I was amazed at how different I felt. I had so much more drive, so much more just, I started to feel what testosterone felt like, you know, at 23, 24 years old. My intensity, my conviction to do something in life, that's when my discipline really, really strengthened because I had just been very depleted. Moving this energy through the microcosmic orbit, circulating it, it changes the form of it. Just from being this heavy, dense energy that just makes you want to find something to fuck or like, you know, find a tissue to crust up. It transformed from being that into this expansive potential, you know, because what we're doing with the microcosmic orbit is opening this communication back up. Most men we get cut off right here to where we can only experience, often an experience of sex that's based in lust and just instant gratification, just getting off. And so once your sexual energy becomes reintroduced to the rest of the body, you know, it connects to the heart center, and you feel more connected. You remember what it feels like to have love and acceptance. And talking about those qualities, the inner smile, you become a more virtuous person. You're more driven. You're more connected. You're more likely to do good in the world. You know, you amplify these qualities, and you balance the quality of love and lust. And to me, that's when the magic happens, because just that lustful, heavy sexual energy, there's nothing wrong with the experience of lust, but that alone, it's a very heavy, dense energy that wants to move out of your body. So when you reintroduce the sexual center and the heart center, that heart fire lightens up the sexual energy, and it makes it much more easy to move through your body. Like, I remember when I was working with men a few years ago, I feel like the question kept coming up of like, you know, I'm doing these practices and I'm having amazing orgasmic experiences with women, but when I'm doing self-cultivation, self-pleasure, I'm not in those same full body orgasm states. And I was like, okay, what's happening during sex and what's happening during self-pleasure? And I realized that during sex, you know, because I'm with a partner who I've been with a long time, there's a strong heart connection. There's that love, there's that connection, intimacy, and that lightens up the energy. And it's just a different quality. My heart is more involved, basically. And I realized often when I was self-pleasuring, it was just pure lust. It's just like, what's going to turn me on and get me off? And it was an interesting realization. So I was like, what if I bring in that heart energy? What if I love myself as if I was my own sexual partner? And when I was doing that with self-pleasure, it totally changed the quality of the experience. It was incredibly powerful. I'm like, wow, that's what's missing is the love energy. So when you mix that heart energy with that lust, there's an alchemy there, and it lightens up that sexual energy, and it wants to rise up through your body. It wants to be expressed as full body orgasm instead of ejaculatory orgasm. So we're building up the energy and we're transmuting it. And it's really important when you're on this path that you have outlets for your energy, because I remember one of the first things Michael Wynn told me when I started studying with him like 10 years ago was that you don't want to have like really big, huge, massive amounts of energy. And what he says, like, you want to have balanced, harmonious energy. And I noticed this pattern in my own practice, you know, as I've been into all kinds of crazy shit of Neigong and Qigong, learning some very, very powerful stuff. And I started to become a bit of a Qi addict I was focusing, you know, talking about clearing, building, and circulating. Well, I got really focused just on building and just like building Qi, building Qi, building Qi. And I noticed I was feeling a bit more stressed, a bit more agitated, and just kind of like, because I was building far more energy than I was really having things to put it into, and I was just kind of hoarding it. And a lot of men get into that mindset with semen retention, actually, where it's like, I need to keep all this for myself. Like, you can't leave my body. And that quality of thought, when it's like, no, I need to stop ejaculating, I can't let myself do this, that thought form creates a contraction in your energy body. So instead of your focal point being like, okay, ejaculation's wrong, it's the enemy, I need to stop doing it, that's not it. That's not quite it. It's about redirecting that energy, redirecting. So instead of a build-up to ejaculation, it's like, can I redirect that energy throughout my body? And even if you're doing your practice and you're having sex and you're circulating the energy, even if you ejaculate after that, it's going to be actually less of a loss, because at least that energy's been introduced to your system and you've been able to absorb some of it. So you're not actually losing so much. It's important to have productive outlets when you're building up sexual energy. You're increasing your energetic input, you must also increase your energetic output. It's not that you want to spend everything that you're gaining, but it's like, again, it's easy to turn into a pressure cooker when you're just building tons and tons of energy and you don't have any outlet for it. And I've experienced that at certain times in my life. Something creative that exercises your creativity. For me, it's music. I love to create music. It's always been one of my things. And I've noticed anytime I go like a period of time without just picking up my guitar and playing it, there's this kind of like edginess that sets in. And as soon as I do that, as soon as I reconnect with music, it's just like, I feel fantastic. It could be something else, like, you know, woodworking. I feel like doing something with your hands, like creating something with your hands really helps you just put the energy into something. So something to think about. Also, like, I became an entrepreneur. I did sexual kung fu, and I built a business and learned about, like, you know, making money and marketing. And I wouldn't have believed 10 years ago, telling myself what my life would look like. I wouldn't have believed it. You know, and I'm not trying to like, oh, I'm so cool. It's just like, I was really stuck, you know, small town farmer boy. Like, I had really lack mindsets around money and things. And so working with sexual energy was one of the biggest catalysts for overcoming, because here's the thing. We all have the potential to create our own realities. I truly feel that as human beings, we're gods, lowercase God. We're all individual creators. We're all this fractal of the greater field of this universe of creation that we're living in. But the only thing stopping us from being who we want to be is doubt. It's self-doubt that gets instilled in us from other people, from maybe it's parents, it's peers. Oh, you'll never be able to do that. Oh, no, that's impossible. That's ridiculous. Why would you want to retain your semen? That sounds terrible. You'll damage your prostate, whatever it is. And there is also this whole process of, it's kind of like unlearning. Like Yoda told Luke, you must unlearn what you have learned. It truly is. It's coming back to the space of, this is one of the biggest goals of Taoist internal alchemy, is to remove, they call it the postnatal conditioning, the later heaven realm, this physical reality we're living with. You know, after we're born, we come from the space of pure, I was talking about neutral force yesterday, yuan qi, which is, you know, there's yin, yang, there's yuan. Yuan's neutral force. When we're children, we have a high degree of neutral force because we're unpolarized. We have this pure potential. That's why we're so joyous, we're so flexible. And we can be, you know, super pissed off 1 second, then 5 seconds later be, you know, laughing and having fun again. But as we go through life, we start to take on these belief systems. We start to take on these rigidities, like, oh, you know what, actually, now I'm a Republican, so I have to disagree with what a Democrat says. That's just one example, you know, or, you know, I believe this, so I can't believe that. Whatever it is, we develop these rigidities. And I see myself sometimes getting really rigid in, like, even like my practice, like, oh, I've become a lot more flexible. Like being out here visiting family, I used to be like, nope, I got to do my practice 3 hours, 4 hours a day. Now I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm with my family. I'm just going to enjoy myself, enjoy my life. So anyways, we start to become more and more polarized to where there's no more room for that neutrality, that spontaneous, that flexibility. It's like the tree that's rigid is easily blown over. The tree that's flexible, it can withstand storms. So the more you can remove this extremely polarized conditioning and develop more flexibility in your mind, in your body, and in your life, that's one of the, from my experience, this is one of the greatest keys to longevity, because you're not going to, if you want to live a long time, you have to have a good reason to be alive. You know, if you're miserable and like you hate your life, why would you want to stay here? So that's why a lot of this process is stripping down these belief systems, these things, these limitations we've taken on. Because once you do that, again, the only thing standing in your way is yourself. It's the beliefs you've chosen to take on. And so sexual energy as an amplifier allows you to amplify yourself, to bond yourself to harmony, to productivity, to love, to creativity, etc. So you have to be mindful of where your mind is. You have to be mindful of the actions that you're taking. You have to be mindful of just how you're engaging. And it's all a constant process. And, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. It's easy to start this journey with pure intent and pure integrity, and then life is always tempting you. The more energy you have, the more you're going to be tempted by various forces. It's good to remember, like, why am I doing this? What is my intent for my practice? You know, if it's just for power, just for status and things, you're not going to get very far in your practice. What's going to make this path sustainable for you is having a purpose, and even something that's bigger for yourself. In 2017, I was studying with Michael Wynn my second year at his summer retreats, and this was when I was becoming an instructor. And I remember I had this realization. It was just like, wow, this work is so incredibly important, and there's not a lot of people sharing this, and especially in a way that's relatable to my generation, like the current people. So it's like, you're going to teach this work. I'm like, shit, okay. And so it really made me step up in my I was already pretty strong in my practice, but it was like, I've got to do this for all men. This is for all mankind. And like when you're practicing for a greater thing than just yourself, like you're going to really bring it.